Hello, everyone. How are you today? Saturday. Well, in Philly, the sun's out. I'm glad to see the sun. I get a actual rush when I see the sun, let alone when I'm in it. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, guess who's back? You know I was going to bring her back. Come on now. I wanted to have a little conversation. Now, this lovely lady, she's a psychotherapist. Now, this is her live. It's like an hour long, maybe a little over an hour. I'm going to chop through it, so we can unpack together. Now, if this doesn't apply to you, it was wonderful to meet you. But you might want to go on past my video. This is here for people that have trauma bonds. Yeah. Especially starting from childhood. Ooh. Because unfortunately, if you're anything like I was, where you were kind of, when you're trying to find the best ways to say something. Yeah. When I do that, I tend to have to pause, like, oh, they're there. Okay, so when you come from humble beginnings, like I did, and trauma is all around you, and parents are really struggling to do the best that they can in the most unfortunate of circumstances, things happen. We can't protect our children from everything. And sometimes we don't even know to protect them from their own family members. They're there. That's no good. So I'm going to let this professional, because in my past, I tried to kind of have these conversations with some of the trauma bond relationships I didn't know I was in then, but I know now it was a trauma bond. I was often gaslit. That's my new favorite word, gaslit. See, that word summarizes how I have been treated most of my life. I just didn't know it was a name for it. And it started, I was trained to kind of, oh boy, I was coached as a young child to kind of allow gaslighting situations to exist in my life through pure ignorance. So it is a thing, which is why I wanted to bring a professional in it, Because a lot of times, this would just fall under my personal experience or my opinion, no doubt. We have some viewers that might even be some of my family members that tend to throw salt in the wound. They're there. No, I'm not saying that I know everything. No, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. No, I'm not saying that I am the savior. I'm not saying any of this. Had to throw that out there for the, folks that like to come for me, But what I am saying is what I've learned in my personal experience. When you leave trauma unpacked, when you lead your life with trauma bonds, your success is not your neighbor. It is that much harder to achieve and accomplish anything, let alone self-actualization. If you have unpackaged childhood trauma, if you have a bunch of trauma bonds in your life, and you just making it work, you just getting by, no, baby, that ain't it. I had to learn the hard way that wasn't it. It's funny though to me. We all tend to need to learn the hard way. I'll say most of us. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we have to wait till the diagnosis to slow down? Why do you think we have to wait for the sickness, the nausea? Why do we have to wait? You ever wonder that? It's an answer for it. But let's let the good doctor get started. And I'm going to pause throughout it to chime in and give you my personal experience when I can relate to what she's saying. Pay attention, folks. Yeah.
Going to be an interesting one, I think, because I think we all in some capacity have dealt with some kind of emotional bond that either has resulted in loss, the normal process of loss, or we have dealt with a more of an intimate partner bond that has devastated or has shifted how we see other people and relationships, and you know, how we see their place in the world. I also think that we have, most of us on the channel, and just most of us in the world, I think we have also experienced a major loss of some kind. And so we know what the bond does to us when it is disrupted, when it is not properly managed by both people in the relationship, right?
Yep.
And we also know what it feels like when we kind of step into this family. Once we're born, we step into this family dynamic, and interestingly, infants are very sensitive. I'll put it that way. They're very sensitive to their environment and who's holding them and who's around them. And the minute we become babies in the world, we develop bonds, and we recognize, even at a very young age, even an age that has nothing to do with numbers, right? So infancy, the baby is even aware then what a bond is and what it isn't. And the brain and the central nervous system of the baby helps them understand that, okay, that is mommy over there, that's dad over there. I'm safe in this bond. And I don't have to worry about being abused. I don't have to worry about being not fed. I don't have to worry about anything other than being in this bond, eating, sleeping, and growing, and making sense out of the world. And isn't it interesting, guys? You probably can relate to this if you've been around babies or you've had children yourself. Isn't it interesting how aware of bonds they are? Even in infancy, they will cry and scream their heads off if you put them in the arms of somebody that isn't healthy, or you put them in the arms of somebody that they don't like or they don't know. The baby knows it. That's how young we can be when we first start recognizing and realizing what a bond actually means. Now, over the course of development, right, we develop further bonds. We either become closer or we become distant. So tonight, we're going to talk about those bonds where you've become possibly distant from those people in your world that you just know are not okay for you. Family, a relationship, friends, even work partners. You recognize that the bond is unhealthy. So what do I do when the bond is unhealthy? How do I know it's unhealthy? How do I know that I've kind of been locked into this prison with this other individual and I can't get out? Now imagine, before I start dropping some new terms,
Preach,
imagine
girl.
If you haven't had this
Ain't she good?
experience,
I love
imagine being a child. You know, and we're talking about a child between the ages of 10 and 18. So you're well aware of how relationships should go by 10. You know exactly when you're not approved of, when you are approved of. You know when you feel loved and when you don't. You know when something's wrong and something isn't wrong. So we're going to start with 10. So let's say you are between the ages of 10 and 18. You recognize something's going on with your mother. So I'm giving you a very vibrant example. Something is wrong with mom. I recognize that, yes, I am 10. I'm still a child. But when I look at my mom, I feel emotionally unsafe. I feel emotionally detached. I don't feel cared for. I feel judged and criticized. I feel confused and uncertain. She's unpredictable. She's inconsistent. How do I meet her expectations? And over time, you may come to find out you're never going to meet her expectations. You're never going to meet her demands. And you're never going to be what she wants. Because the bond between you two is just not working. Hence the title of this live chat.
Now, I had to chime in. Oh, thank you, James. I'm doing the most. You understand me? I have every minute second, hour, listen, millisecond spoken for in my days. But I have the energy for it. So it's not really, I'm doing overkill. I'm just high arousal, high energy person. So I'm doing what I can do. Now, I had to chime in. That example she just gave, that was the adult that coached me. Now, she used an example of a mother doing that or making the child, the 10-year-old, feel that way. That's how I felt with that trusted adult. When I tell you the approval trap he set me up for, big time. That was the worst. Listen, let me give some free advice to any father out there or mother, really. When, oh Lord, sure, let me get my tongue together, y'all. Boy, because this ain't fluff. I didn't just randomly pick this and say, oh, let's just do it. This personal. I don't post nothing unless I feel it. So that is a very real and authentic response you're getting from me. Huh? I can extremely relate with that example because I was going out of my way to get validated externally all the time from people that were predatory towards me. For whatever reason. This didn't matter. So parents, you can set your child up by default to indirectly to be the approval trap, basically, where they're constantly trying to what's it called? Hold on. The child will constantly be seeking approval from others all the time. So for example, if you're the type of parent, let's say your child, I don't know, they have ADHD. And for whatever reason, you're doing the best you can to work with them, but the symptoms is really symptoming. Like the symptoms is all the time. You feel overwhelmed. You can only imagine what the child is feeling. So when kids like that, they don't hear praise often. I'm going to keep it a beam with you. Those are some severely damaged emotional children because of their behavior, because of their unique brain. They often get criticism, judged, punished. This is the life of an ADHDer. You hear more about what you're doing wrong and less about what you're doing right. And you get stuck in that kind of mindset as a child growing into an adult. And if it's mindless, like mine was, nigga, you got bigger problems. Go to therapy. But parents, yeah, if you have a child that's struggling with that, the best advice, don't personalize it. That's your child's diagnosis. Even if you got ADHD yourself, because I have it and my child had it. Okay? So I didn't make her struggles about me. But what I didn't know is that every time I'll call it challenges. Every time she had challenges, I got triggered because I never unpacked my baggage, let alone even knowing that I had baggage to unpack. So that caused me to have a mildly skewed perception on my daughter's challenges. And then I was leading with a lot of fear that comes directly from my childhood trauma. All up in my adult life. I'm just swearing, I'm doing my adult fizzle, I'm handling business. No, I ain't standing on business. I'm standing on feelings, unpacked feelings. So I'm intensifying my experience of parenting by who knows how much because I didn't never deal with my trauma bonds. I didn't deal with any of this stuff, and then I just had children. Yeah, exactly. Hot mess. How many parents you think fell victim to this as well? This is not about judgment. It's about unity and spreading knowledge instead of spreading gossip. I'm done to death with that. That is one of my most annoying. Let me get my attitude together. I'm super annoyed by gossipers. Gossip about your life. You so quick to want to put a live up and talk about somebody else's business. Let's hear about your life. Squeeze me. Let's hear about your down and out days. Let's hear about when you were promiscuous. You won't run your mouth about other people like ain't nothing in your closet that need to be unpacked. They're there. God is to judge us all. We losing ourselves too much in this hype. Quit getting tangled up in the matrix, folks. And we are spiritual beings first, physical beings second. You need to understand first, understand second. Listen, get your life together. Understand what I'm saying? Let's get back to the good doctor. What's up?
Just not working. But what do you do when that's your mom, right? When that's your mother? You want to have that healthy bond, but it's just not going to happen with her. And you've learned, most likely, possibly, at a very young age, that something is off here. But how do I fix that? You know? And what do you do when the mom says, you're the problem all the time? You know? And mom doesn't need any help. You just need to stop doing A, B, and C. You just need to do what I'm telling you to do. You just need to listen better. You know? And so it becomes you're the problem and not mom. You're the problem and not me.
I had to chime in. Thank you, James, for all of your praise and support. It really means a lot to me, you know, because when I started this, I was just a soccer mom. I had, 76 friends on Facebook? Yeah. But I was lifing, you know, raising my kids. I guess you can say, I'll say I wasn't a content creator. I don't want to come for nobody by accident and then people get offended. But no, I'm someone that lives in moments. So a lot of the times, I wouldn't remember to grab my phone all the time. So let me take a picture. I eventually I got into that, but I live in moments. You know what I'm saying? I'm about to sit here and miss moments because I'm worried about all the things that don't matter in life, you know? But what she just said, that example, now in my experience, I'm not going to name any people, but I'm going to say that, let's see how I'm going to break this down. Break it down. All right. A mother and a daughter. I'm going to just say it like that. Now, this mother comes from a lot of trauma. And she's very intuitive, the mother. But unfortunately, you know, this mother wind up, you know, falling in love with a guy, very talented guy, very known guy, you know, very loving, caring, big heart kind of guy. But he suffered with, you know, substance and stuff like that. So, you know, they had children or whatever. But in this example I'm giving you, the mother and one of the children, their relationship wound up being compromised because the substance abusing parent would play the kids against the mom. And unfortunately, because the kids were so young, in this example I'm using, the kids didn't understand that they were being coached against their own mother, no doubt. So this young person grew up to really challenge that mother and feel like the mother was, every example she just said, unfair. Wanted the mother wants that child to conform to what they think is appropriate. The child can't think for themselves. The mother stifles their growth. This is that child's experience. When in hindsight, it has been a manipulation that went on in that. See, the substance abuse using parent often would go missing and stuff like that. So a lot of the times the children, you know, kind of fling to the parent that was available more. So it caused a lot of immature behavior in that, you know, substance abusing parent. And a lot of triangulation was going on. So that parent could create opportunities to feel like a special parent, like the kid's happy to see me too type of thing. But it was so toxic. And I just felt like sharing that because sometimes you can think, oh, my parent pushing me away and they don't love me, they ain't got my back. When the whole time it's an injury with boundaries. That parent might have boundaries and you just disrespect them and want the parent to not have boundaries for you. What? Also, values, certain things have to line up. As far as I'm concerned, now I'm a mother. My children know very well what my rules are, what I'm good with, what I'm not good with. As my children become adults, if they were to come visit me and everything and come violate one of my boundaries, number one, I'm going to tell them about themselves. Number two, I'm going to give a consequence. Either they won't be able to come right back, or they can't spend nights, or like you can't. I learned it's better to give people a consequence, or else they're going to treat you like a welcome mat. Walk all over you. Because you don't give consequences out. I could do what I feel like, and you ain't going to say nothing. You might yell at best. I can deal with that. See, you got a lot of people out there that's like that. I'm mildly like that. There, I said it. But listen, I practice a lot of things to live morally correct. You understand? So I practice out of a lot of my trauma bond behavior, a lot of my trauma responses. I'm giving healthier responses to replace it with. So I'm doing my work. But I just wanted to say, sometimes you might think it's your parent that's on one when really it's the child that's on one, and they just can't see it. They might be that compromised mentally. That's the thing. Think about it.
You know, and I have a lot of kids in my practice right now who's like that. I've treated them over the past 15 years of my career, and it is devastating because that is one bond that you absolutely cannot get away from until you get to a certain age. So if you haven't experienced this, imagine that the abuse can just go on until you turn an age where you can be more independent. But even then, that unstable mother has left a major scar. So we're going to talk about that as well tonight. Now, let's get into some of the psychology language here and some of the research. I see you guys chatting it up. We're going to talk about, a bunch of stuff tonight. One, what are some common behaviors that the bond is just not working? It's never worked. It isn't working. What's wrong with this bond? So I'm going to go down some bullet points for you in a little bit so that you can look at this and say, oh my God, this is my life, right? And I always, if you will, I always try to bring that kind of value, because you need to know that you're validated, you're making sense, you understand what's happening to you. So we're going to go down that and then go down the bullet point list. And then I'm going to give you some research. And then I'm also going to highlight some ways that these unhealthy, destructive bonds impact you. Let me get a sip of water, guys. And then we're going to get into some of the language here in a minute. I apologize. I'm still trying to get better. I don't know if you can tell. I sound a little weird today. Okay, so let's talk about this before we jump into all the meaty content. Let's start with something that's known as intermittent maltreatment and abuse. Intermittent maltreatment and abuse. Here's what psychology says. What happened to no one?
Hey, we got commercials on here. This is real. This is actually YouTube I'm playing this off of. So she really gets into detail. That's what I love about her. I love how she breaks things down because that's what I need. I need someone a lot of the times that can give me examples because sometimes I might not catch right on to what you're saying to me. And that's another thing that people would benefit off stop doing. Judging people just because they didn't understand what you said the first time. It's more than one way to say anything. Instead of shame people because they didn't catch on, you could be looking at that differently. How about, why don't you learn more than one way to say it? That works too. How we can make that fair going all the way around. I'm just not here for people that just want to come and attack others. Especially people that are struggling in their own bodies. Some of them know it, some of them don't know it. And they'll portray their stuff onto you. That's happened to me more than it has not happened to me. And now I'm a lot better with understanding what that is, what it means, all of the things that, I'm so glad for that because, oh my God, I've been so stressed. You understand me? Severely stressed. And not knowing in what way that I've been being taken advantage of all these years by people that are, really were close to me. I had to get rid of a lot of my trauma bond relationships. Not, through anger and hate. Just wish them well,
Not something that happens as infrequently as we think. maltreatment and abuse, whether it's a child, an adolescent, or an adult child, it can happen in various ways, right? You can be abused physically, emotionally, sexually, psychologically. You can also be harassed. You can be stalked by some family members. We can talk about that as well tonight. You can also be harassed on your job. You can be harassed in a relationship that you're in. You can be manipulated. You can be coerced to do certain things with an ultimatum, right? You can also be emotionally extorted or exploited, meaning that a person has some information on you and they are holding that intimate information so that when you do something wrong, they're going to let all that information out there to exploit you. So we also have that. So these are...
That has been done to me too. Ain't that shady for somebody that, but like, in my opinion, I had more of a neutral approach to it in the conversation I was having with this person. Actually, it's been more than one person in my life that tried to sit there and like do a blackmail situation. Bye, Felicia. Like, I've been in the presence of certain family members that I am close to, and you know, now that I look back at it, I can see where it was a total manipulation. Like, oh my God, no, you didn't. First of all, threats to move to a state where, you know, I'm not living, so I can't visit as much. So they would say things a certain way. That way, it would be easier for me to jump on an opportunity to babysit for them. Like, people, listen, when you are cognitively behind or you're not easy to notice manipulation, they will play in your face. Oh my God. Where they face at? Playing it. Like, they will play. And what I mean by play in your face, you they new fool. Anything and everything they can get away with, oh, best believe they finna do it. So you got to watch yourself. Garb yourself with knowledge. Because the more you understand, the less that you can allow bad things to just oddly happen to you. You'll have too much knowledge. You'll be too aware. And most of the time, people that are manipulative don't like that. They rather you ignorant. That makes it much easier to manipulate you. Now, when you go gaining knowledge and reading books, now you're doing a lot. Now, all the people that thrive in their lifestyle off of manipulating the people that can't tell that they're being worked, flip the table on them. What happens if everyone that's a people pleaser just innately stops? And I mean, like, people pleasing in a negative way. That's affecting your mental health in a negative way. Like, trying to overcompensate for something that you feel like you lack or whatever. If everybody, people please just stopped. Number one, everybody that's manipulative would have to learn another way to exist, because now nobody's a fool. I see exactly what you're doing. You know, it'll be much better for us all if we increase our knowledge and spread it, because knowledge is meant to be spread. Why would you learn a bunch of things that could change the world and let it die with you? No. Spread knowledge. Huh?
These are a few ways that you can be, be abused. I'll put it that way. These are a few ways that you could be abused. What's scary about this kind of abuse, though, and primarily for adult children or adults in certain relationships, if the abuse is intermittent, meaning that it only happens at certain times, then the abuse can often drag on for many years in different capacities and in different ways. And it may be very hard for you to stop that person from abusing you. Let's say, for example, your father is very cold and callous. He has absolutely no empathy. He doesn't care anything about you. And, he's left the family. He's gotten remarried. He's gotten a better job. He does not pay child support. He did not pay child support when you were younger. Now you're an adult. He's still not supporting you. Here you are in this world all by yourself without a father. His behavior, though, has randomly impacted you. So he's not in your life 100% of the time. But when he shows up, he's argumentative. He's confrontational. He's angry and hostile. He threatens, right? He uses the legal system against you and maybe your extended family. He just becomes a monster. And even though it may not be, I see dad every week and he's mean to me, it may be I see dad twice a year and he's abusive. I see dad once every 5 years and he's abusive. We can consider that intermittent abuse. It doesn't happen consistently. It happens at random times, but it has a very negative impact on your mind, on your heart, on your soul.
Yeah.
And you can't handle it. It's way too much.
Yes, it is.
Now, what makes
an
emotional bond detrimental? There's one important thing that I see all the time.
Preach.
When it comes to unhealthy or toxic emotional bonds.
What is it, girl?
And that's what we call
what is it, girl?
A power differential.
Yep.
I'm going to say that again. Usually when there's an unhealthy and toxic bond in any relationship, I often see, and so does research in psychology on traumatic bonding, I often see what's called a power differential. A power differential is this. It's, I have this much status above you. So I'm here and you're here.
Yep.
You're here and dad's here. Does that make sense, guys? And so why is that? Well, a power differential can include a variety of things. A therapist, for example, can have a power differential with a client. Why? Because a client is going to the therapist for help. The client is also going to the therapist for medical treatment. The client is also going to the therapist who has been entrusted and has been upheld professionally with the promise that they're not going to sexually violate their clients. They're not going to put things in a medical record that's not correct. They're going to audit and monitor their boundaries and their clinical documentation appropriately. They're not going to exploit you. And they're most certainly not going to date you, right? Or be flirty with you, or invite you to dinner, or invite you to their birthday party. There's a clear boundary. I can give you this much of myself to help you. I care about you. But then there's this boundary, right? That's an example of a power differential. Does that happen in relationships where the bonds are unhealthy and toxic? 100%. Let's say, for example, your mother's very narcissistic. She loves to be in control of everything. She wants you to wear what she wants you to wear. She buys you things that she thinks that you're going to like, although she only wants you to take her, things that she wants you to have. She doesn't allow you to have an opinion outside of her own, right? She's very controlling and she's very condescending. Where's the power differential with a narcissistic parent? Well, the power differential could be in the details of, I am parent, you are child. I am parent, you are child. Or it could be, I have more money than you and you're asking me for a loan. Makes sense, guys? So in unhealthy toxic bonds, within a family, within a friendship, within a work situation, there is often a power differential. Gender can also be a power differential. If you're in a relationship with someone, right, and there's a male who is abusing and neglecting and manipulating you, there's a power differential there. Just because men often hold a very powerful place in society. That's changing a little at a time, isn't it, guys? But for the most part, men hold a powerful position over women. And so that can also be a power differential. So you want to keep that in mind as you're looking at these unhealthy, toxic, dysfunctional bonds in your life. Am I in a situation where there's a power differential where somebody is here and I am here? That's a good way to kind of evaluate what your bonds are. Now, you guys are very familiar, before I go to the chat box, you guys are very familiar with trauma bonding. I know you have to be traumatic bonding. I should call it. You can call it either one, but I prefer the traumatic bonding. You guys are very familiar with that, but let me just briefly go over it. So Traumatic bonding is basically built on the premise that there's intermittent reinforcement and there is also intermittent punishment. So intermittent reinforcement, again, is I'm doing something every now and then that's going to influence your behavior, right? So if you're in a trauma bond with your father, for example, here's what dad does. Dad hurts you. He disappoints you. He uses the power differential against you, right? Because he's a man. So maybe he feels like he's up here compared to you. So he uses the power differential.
Thank you.
One minute he's mean.
I'm glad you enjoyed
cold, callous, unempathic, careless,
girl,
manipulative, right? We can give him all those negative definitions or labels. So he's being mean to you, he's cold, the list goes on. So he may be like that for a good month. But come February, he may be the nicest dad ever. He may love you, cherish you, praise you, text you every day, ask you every morning how you are, wish you a good night every night, right? He may also say to you, you know, Dad's so proud of you, you know, you're my favorite, you know, that kind of stuff. But then March may come and he's back to being the devil. So that's intermittent reinforcement. It's every now and then I reinforce you by giving you something that you want from me, that too. Which is love, affection, praise, safety, security, the list goes on. But don't bank on it, because if you think I'm going to remain that way, think again, because when we hit March, I am now going to be a very different dad.
So true. The up and down.
And that's not going to be good.
Oh, God. 1 minute, I'm good. Next minute, jaw hit. Like, okay, what's going on? What's going on? I don't know.
So that is intermittent reinforcement. Now, one last thing before I go to the chat box is punishment may also become a part of this puzzle. Excuse me. And can you believe I'm still dying, guys? It's been like a whole 3 weeks.
Get the best sleep of your life when you shop the President.
She is so good. I swear. She's hitting all of the marks. You understand what I'm saying? I'll wait till she get a little later. I'm hoping I can get through it all. My husband, he went to work today. So he's going to be getting here soon. I can't remember the time. But today is our quality time day. So I'm getting my videos out the way. And then, yeah.
How this can make you feel when, you know, 1 month dad loves me, the next month he doesn't. And then punishment can come as well. And the punishment could be, I'm not going to talk to you for 6 months. You know, I'm not going to talk to you for 6 weeks. But I will come back around and say, you know what? You're my favorite daughter. You know, come on, son, let's go shoot some hoops, right? And so this is that back and forth kind of.
On point. I've been compared to my youngest sibling often. Take water. Yeah, I actually have my water bottle right beside me while I'm talking. But yeah, the favorite thing has been an issue in my childhood compared to my other sibling. And see, this part is where it hit my soul as a teenager and a little kid. I didn't know I was struggling with ADHD, and really no one else knew. So I was expected to perform as a child that has not got ADHD. So you can only imagine how I was came for, judged, gossiped about. Oh my God, listen, you say it, they've done it. Like it is a lot. And a lot of times I was self-sabotaging. Had no clue I was doing so. That's why I'm so passionate about these videos. Especially the people that feel lost, might be lost like I was. Gotta have each other's back. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, we all are one. For me, I'm not really interested so much in the difference of ethnicity. Oh, you're from, Africa, Ethiopia. Oh, you're Caucasian. Listen, Human race. That summarizes it all. We all bleed the same way, huh? Don't get caught up in the things that really shouldn't matter the most. Gotta know who's behind that. Huh?
Traumatic bonding seesaw. And it keeps you stuck.
Don't it,
and
girl?
It plays with your mind.
Preach.
And it's an unhealthy bond. Why? Because it's not a bond that is built on trust, safety, love, security, none of it. It is built on false ideas of what the relationship is. And sometimes you can fall for that because it feels so normal, right? But then other times, I think we can be very, very aware, even subconsciously, that this is not a healthy bond. This is going absolutely nowhere, and it needs to stop because I'm going to end up being the victim here. And that's basically what happens. All right, I'm going to go to the chat box. Thank you so much, Jessica J. I see you giving me some tips. I've been doing everything. I've been literally doing everything. And I'm still sick. I really do think it's stress. My job doesn't let me take a break. Okay, let me go to the chat box. And then we're going to jump into this. You're going to want to know, what are some common behaviors here? How do I know that I'm stuck in this trauma bond? How do I know that I'm stuck in this bond that's not okay? You know, what are those signs? What are those barriers? So we're going to get into that. And then I also want to go over something known as cognitive distortions, which are skewed ways that we think based on our experience and how we're looking at things. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. Let me just start welcoming you guys. Pink Meadows, always glad to see you. Love the positivity. Thank you for that. Welcome. I see Sun and Sunflowers. I'm so glad that you made it live as well. Good to see you. Nancy R., good to see you. You were early. I saw that. Starburst, thank you so much for that compliment. Hello and welcome. So good to see you back. Brianne D. Hopefully I said that correctly. Hello and welcome. Good to see you tonight. You too, Elizabeth. Good to see you. Yeah. Yes. Trauma survivor. Yes. Remind me, would you please? So glad you remembered. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. Then I can go ahead and address what you were saying. But welcome to tonight's chat. Glad to see you. Joe Stephenson, hello, welcome. Glad to see you. Yeah, and I don't remember seeing you. So welcome to the channel. Lore Fit, good evening to you as well. Star, hello, glad to have you. I also see Nicole B. Hello, I know that's your first live. I was scrolling through and I'm like, I see some new faces. So it's really good to see you. Welcome. I had to be sick on this one. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Jessica J. That's so sweet of you. Hello and welcome. Glad to see you as well. And thank you for the tips. Oh my God. As soon as I'm done with the live chat tonight, I'm literally going to run to Target and grab every cold, tool I can find, okay, and put it in my basket. Half the battle knowing is hello. Hello and welcome. Good to see you. Half the battle knowing is, as I was just listening to one of your old streams, and here you go. Yep. Hopefully this is going to be a better stream than the last one. Abundant Life, good to see you as well. I also see GB Joe. Hello and welcome to tonight's live chat. Okay, I'm looking for comments, guys. Bear with me as I scroll. Yvette, hello, welcome. Happy Friday. Ellie Wynn, hello. Thank you so much for that. I hope it's going to be helpful. Indigo Sass, haven't seen you in a little while. Welcome back. Cheyenne, welcome back. Good to see you. T-Map, it's good to see you as well. Okay, the good glow. Let me look at this. Yeah, it's raining here too. Man, I love Baltimore. I was there for a conference a couple months ago, and I literally was holding on to the hotel doorknobs. I'm like, I don't want to leave.
I love when she does this. Oh, I'm doing laundry. Multitask, doing my live and folding clothes. Come on now. Can't touch this. Hey. No. But I like how she'll take a break from her content and educating us on the information. And then she'll take questions from her viewers. And then she'll answer that, giving us more in-depth information about the topic in question. That's what she's doing right now. And then she's going to jump back into the content.
I'm going to leave. So where I'm at is boring. It really is. Good to see you, though. Welcome. Nancy R. says, I would hand over my baby, and then I had to sneak out of the room just so they could hold her for a while. I would hand over my baby, and then I had to sneak out of the room just so they could hold her for a while. Did I miss that? You said, Nancy, I was so different from my mom. Ooh, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm going to come back to that because I'm not sure what that meant. It'll come to me. It's just my brain is all over the place, you know? Dawn 1, hello, welcome back. So good to see you as well. Orlando, good to see you. Good to see you. Okay, looking for comments, guys. Bear with me. Karina Ether, I hope I said that correctly. Welcome, it's good to see you. Longevity Rituals, it's been a while, but it's always good to see you back in the chats. Ken Eisen, hello and welcome back. Man, there's a lot of you on here. Wow. So I'm guessing that... Thank you, Jessica J. I see a lot of comments. I'm just trying to pinpoint which one I'm going to start with. It looks like a lot of you can relate to this topic, huh? Laura Fitz says, you feel tense around, and they also trigger you intensely. I think you meant you feel tense around them, and they also trigger you intensely when you are not aware of what's going on. Yeah, let me say that if you are in a situation where there's an unhealthy bond, there's a trauma bond, there's an abusive bond, there's a manipulative bond, some kind of bond that is really emotionally taking you down, you have to keep in mind that there is fight or flight, okay? And usually our central nervous systems, you know, the amygdala, I'll put it this way first, because I think this makes better sense. The amygdala, which is our emotional center of the brain, once it senses danger, the next thing it has to do is kickstart a variety of other brain-related regions. And that then starts that whole cycle of fight or flight. So it really is like a, I don't know what we could call it here. It's kind of like it's a whole machine process, you know? It hits the brain first, then the prefrontal lobes, which is right behind the forehead, the part of our executive functioning, the frontal lobes starts making sense out of what's happening. And then fight or flight gets kicked off, and then it's hard to get it to stop. And especially if you are living in the same house or you're in the same area with somebody who's very abusive, manipulative, controlling, and fight or flight just continues on like an engine. And sometimes it never shuts off, even when you're sleeping. And that's...
She ain't never lied right there. Had to share that again. I have been around people and I have ignored my sixth sense. Partially because I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know it exists. I just would... When I was in the custody of the trusted adult and I was teabagged, diluted into the trauma situations, no one knew what he was exposing me to. So often I would get those gut feelings with that adult. And if I asked questions, I would get punched in the mouth. So in my situation, I was abused out of using my sixth sense before I could learn that it was a thing. So I learned how to be uncomfortable and just take it because of that trusted adult. And can you imagine how many times I put myself in that situation? Let alone there was no people that knew I had that problem. So they exploit me by default. You know what I'm saying? Especially if their intentions wasn't, less than pure. I know now that I've been around people that was envious, which baffles me because of, I guess you could say, immature reasons on my part. I wasn't the most, keeping up with trends. I'm going to get an iPhone. Let me get them red bottoms, name brand this. I didn't care about that type of stuff as much, where a lot of other people did. I was more a person that lived in moments, really high energy. I'm the one that want to sing at the family gathering or sit at the table with the kids or, stuff like that. In my mind, why are you jealous of that person? What's the envy about? To me, that makes no sense until I start researching it and understand the gold that is I. Listen, it is what it is. It's not for us to try to figure out why these people are toxic. It's for us to learn that they're toxic and to move according. That way they can no longer put their problems on you. Get them out of your life. I would say a peaceful approach is better than aggression and confrontation. And plus confrontation, if you want to exit someone's life and you have a mature conversation about it and they get confrontational, question it. No, I'm serious. No, I promise you, question it. And try not to jump to, oh, they really want me in their life. They fighting me. They arguing with me to stay. Yeah, they're there. They might have just been having a ball utilizing your behind, inconveniencing your behind, having you, listen, Linda, don't fall for it. You better explore your options and read in between them lines. Stop letting people manipulate you and you just let it happen. Ask yourself, why am I letting this happen? Why am I scared to say anything at all? And I'm grown. Why? Why am I calling it this when it's really that? Why? And for me, it's because I was purely ignorant. I lacked the knowledge. It's that simple. I know some people are like, oh, please, it's way more than that. No, I promise you that. I lacked the knowledge. And the one other thing, I was coached. And because I thought that it was called something else, like parenting or mentorship, I don't know what, because this person was an authority figure. So I didn't question it as much. So I just would sit and take the abuse. And it taught me to do that moving forward with anyone. So I had a unhealthy response to trauma, unhealthy response to unhealthy people, or it was really bad, yo. It was really bad. And I couldn't talk to certain people that I thought I could because they didn't know my story. Nobody feel bad for me. Not at all. Nah. Not at all. Not even the people that I thought loved me felt bad for me. And really, they can't. They didn't know what I went through. They wasn't there when this trusted adult was coaching me. He did it. It was just me and him. So no wonder everybody looking like, what is she retarded? What is she this? I'm just calling me all kind of just disrespectful names. And again, I would let that happen because I was talked down on by this trusted adult. So I got used to being called out my name. I got used to being bullied. I normalized everything that you're not supposed to normalize and didn't know that was wrong because it's all over the place in my family. Trauma bonds, brushing things under the rug, not speaking on the problematic family members. That one is huge. What I've learned about that is I think a lot of people don't speak on or hold accountable the problematic family members. It's because they simply don't know how to deal with them. And a lot of times trained professionals will say that we don't know how to deal with them. For me, I don't say that. Whenever there was some type of emergency situation, mental health wise in my family, they knew they could call me. I showed up for my uncle. I showed up for my brother. I showed up for my sister in times of need. Not every single time because certain things weren't clear. But I'm here for all that. Less is more. It's a way to talk to people. And a lot of the times when you have unpacked childhood trauma or just trauma not unpacked, period, you moving on codes of trauma, baby. You think you just grown making choices the way you feel like free. No, you ain't. Your inner child is running your adult life. That's just how it works. Okay, I ain't trying to hurt feelings. They're there. I'm not diagnosing. This is my personal experience. And I've researched. I've been reading into a lot. I have a lot of books, magazines, websites, special books that I ain't even going to say. Don't need community violations. I'm so over that. I just want to make sure that I'm being as professional as possible. Without reason, you know? This is my personal opinion and my personal experience. And I'm just validating this information she's saying as she validates me. She's very validating to me. Oh my God. I was looking for this for so long. People have been so invalidated into me in my life. Like I'll say something and it would just be either just what? Or, you know, no one really shared my energy. That's the thing. I'm a high arousal. So it's a lot of people that are more low arousal in my family. So I kind of stand out. I stand out anyway. I'm not bothered by that part. But I'm just saying, less is more. You know, if someone is too much for you, just say that. You don't have to be disrespectful. Like I always say what you mean and mean what you say. Hey, you ain't got to say it mean though. Let's get back to it.
The scary part. So I agree with that, Lord Fett. That's usually how that goes. Okay, I see that the King's Table with Tanisha. Hello and welcome. Good to see you back tonight. Mom Tune. I almost called you Moon Tune. Oh my God. I'm having a hard time here tonight, guys. Mom Tune. Good to see you. Welcome back. Indigo Sass says, same thing with my father. My parents left me to face this world alone. Oh my God, that's so hard. I'm so sorry, Indigo Sass. That is rough. I just told a child that the other day. I said, you know, it's not your fault that your mom and your dad have absolutely left you to fend for yourself in this broken world. It's their responsibility to help you. So guess what? They've got to deal with that burden at some point, and it may burden them as they age or maybe when they die. Who knows? We don't know, right? Don One says, my mother's husband was cold and callous. So was she. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. What did they say? Water seeks its own level? I probably messed that up, but you know where I'm going with that one, Don One. Eclone Jitto 99, hello and welcome. Good to see you back. Haven't seen you in a little while. Michelle Lynn, hello. Happy to see you too. You're always so kind. Good to see you. Ellie Wynn says they are nice to strangers though, sometimes. And that's because subconsciously they know that that is the social way to be. You know, that is the social way to be. And, you know, if that means smiling, dressing like you're put together, maybe even acting like they love you as the child or whoever you're in a relationship with.
Totally
they can act like
frying,
they love you
right?
very much. But as soon as you close that door, forget about it. Right?
Said,
happens all the time.
What'd you say? I have learned how to be a good father to my kids. Very interesting, my boo. Oh, and I'm glad for you. We need more men out there that's willing to be good fathers. That's wonderful. Wish I could bottle you up and splash it on a couple other brothers. But yeah, it's not about being perfect. I believe we all can be our version of perfection. Hear how I said that. Our version. You understand what I'm saying? So a form of our own type of perfection, which speaks to our individuality. But we definitely need more effective parenting. Good mothers, good, healthy, emotionally available mothers, good, healthy, grounded, emotionally available fathers. So good for you, James. Definitely.
Nancy R says, my father was consistently a narcissist, but at some point lived with his second family. My mother was like a light switch, very unstable. Yeah. Clinically, we call that labile mood, right? It's a labile mood, meaning the mood goes up and down and around and around. And it's hard for us to, as clinicians, identify when something is wrong, or it's hard for us to identify what's wrong when the person's emotions are all over the place. So we call it labile moods, you know? And so it sounds like that's what was going on with your mom, Nancy R. Did you know that sometimes unhealthy bonds can be the result of a parent that has a borderline personality? You know, imagine having a parent, a mother who is constantly triggering you. I will share a story with you that I had a couple years ago, but I'm going to do it in just a minute. But imagine having a parent like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, you think, you know, my mom loves me, she cares about me, everything's going to be okay. And the next minute she wants to strangle you. And you don't know what that switch was, you know, what triggered.
Had experience. See, listen, I don't mean to pause it so much. I just have stuff to say. I've experienced that by the trusted adult. If you know me, you know exactly who I'm talking about. And if you don't, I'd rather be private about it. You know what I mean? Unless I was to get that person's blessing to put their name out there. Now, you really think they're going to want me to do that? No. Who wants to be the bad guy? Well, I guess I'm the exception of the rule. If I'm the bad guy, I can own up to it. But that's something I've learned a lot of people can't do. I was so ignorant. I can just, sometimes it blows my mind on just how much I did not know and was unaware of. I really was out in these streets lost, y'all. I could have died so many times. Oh my God. I could have died so many times, let alone when I was sexually assaulted right there. Because the guy that did it tried to coerce me into some situation. And of course I wasn't going to do it, but it blows my mind how lost a child can really be. How unaware of how we show up we really can be. How defensive we can be because of what we've been through. All of that gets in the way of human connection. The very thing we all desperately seek. Human connection. That is what people that's full of trauma are ruining for themselves. And potentially others. And worst of all, our kids. The trusted adult would steal my stuff. I had to re-steal it back. It was one time that I had snuck out the house. It was this cute boy in my neighborhood. It was when we was living now. Shout out to anybody from Lindenfield. Northeast, the projects. It was this guy that I thought was so cute. I was a virgin. But I had snuck out just to have like conversation. Because believe it or not, I was not allowed to talk to boys. My mom, she was okay with it, but a lot of times she, watch, make sure things is what it needs to be, especially after we got old enough. You know what I'm saying? She was always hands-on, which was great. However, the other side was a little off balance. I'll just say that. So a lot of times I would sneak for normalcy because I wasn't allowed to talk to the opposite sex, and then I had a lot of trauma from the opposite sex. Guess what I struggled with? Go on, guess. And I ain't gonna tell you right away. Go on. What you think I struggled with? Anybody listening out there? Squeeze me. What do you think was the main thing I struggled with? Because my abuser was mostly male when it came to sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse. I struggled with my gender, feeling like a girl. No, I knew I was a female. I just didn't feel like, I guess, how I was supposed to feel. And guess why? By default, I was pushed more to be more masculine. I didn't know this. Femininity and feminine behavior would trigger my abuser because of the toxic masculinity injury. So whenever femininity was happening, so for example, painting of nails, wearing lip gloss, maybe a stomach shirt, that was a trigger in that specific person. Oh, you being a hoe. Lip gloss is being a hoe. Like, anything that looked, and I'll speak for myself, hands was on me. And a lot of times I got pulled to the side and aggressed. So a lot of times I would struggle with, I guess you could say, showing up feminine. And I didn't know the breakdowns of feminine and masculine either. Listen, I'm wearing it out there. It is what it is. I'm not about to sit here and lead with shame. This is the truth. I'm not making this up. So with this much ignorance, this much shame that I had going back, and then being held back the way I've been held back through intimidation, physical abuse, shame, gossip. My own family members was trashing me to people like, oh, that's so sorry. And I was like, really? And then it's like, I guess you could say I was fighting it because I didn't want to believe certain stuff. But you can't deny but so much. When them lines be meeting and it be measuring up, and you got to call it what it is. It's going to hurt though. It's going to hurt right in the center. No doubt. Nothing about the work, self-work, that ain't for the weak. That's for the strong. Flex. If you weak, yeah, I see why you're not working on yourself. You should fix that. God don't make no mistakes. None of us was created to be weak. What happens is we become weakened by a more dominant vessel or bullies, circumstances. We don't have the healthy adults breathing the right stuff into us. We go the wrong way. You don't have anyone with emotional fluency to teach you how to emotionally regulate. You use substance or alcohol or sex or whatever your poison is to regulate. So let's not be too hard on ourselves. Let's actually realize that we all are strong. Even if you're leading with weakness, you have a choice. Make it. Let's get back to it.
And I have a family like that now, but I will share just a little bit here a story of one of my previous clients that I had so many years ago. And I think it's going to be relatable to you for the most part, Nancy R. Adila, hello, welcome, good to see you. Welcome back. Couple more comments, guys. Hey, Hayes White, I hope I said that correctly. Hello and welcome, good to see you. Glad to have you in tonight's live chat. Says, well, you just described my mom. I'm sure you're going to hear more. I know you're going to hear more tonight. Michelle Lynn says, Tamara, I went through coercive control, and my therapist said I had Stockholm Syndrome. It was traumatic. I was dating a diagnosed BPD who had sociopathic traits. My goodness.
And that be it for me. How can you tell when you're around a sociopath and a psychopath or a sadist? Listen, yo, it's almost scary. It can be a little intimidating, or it makes me nervous to think about it. You know, sociopaths are created at home. You know, a lot of other challenges, a lot of times kids are born with. But there's ways to measure this. So if the parent is not all in, the child really suffers. They really do.
And let me say, Michelle, you did bring that up in one of the live chats that I was doing, and I was scrolling down after the fact. I was scrolling down, and I said, oh my goodness, it looks like this is something that I should have addressed during the live chat. So I'm glad you're bringing it back up. Honestly, and let me just say, it could be Stockholm Syndrome, but I think a lot of people get Stockholm Syndrome confused with traumatic bonding. And I wonder as we go along tonight, if you may see yourself in some of this, because we're going to jump back into the content in just a little bit. But I wonder if you're going to see yourself under more of the heading of traumatic bonding rather than Stockholm Syndrome. Let me point out for those of you who are not aware of either of those conditions or classifications, one important piece really makes sense, and it really pulls the picture together for a lot of people. I usually tell even my clients, if they feel like this is something they're dealing with, that Stockholm Syndrome and traumatic bonding has one core feature that really destroys everybody's lives. It destroys their lives, all the victims of Stockholm Syndrome and traumatic bonding. And that is the over-identification with the abuser, the over-identification with the abuser. Whether it's traumatic bonding or Stockholm Syndrome, the victim, I'll put it this way, the victim tends to, in some series of events and in some interesting way, they take the lens off of their own hurt and pain and abuse and maltreatment, and they put it on to the abuser, and the abuser then gets the love, the compassion, the forgiveness, the sensitivity that the victim should be getting. Why? Because in some way there is an over-identification with the abuser. An example of that would be, I would feel like him. Let's say you're in a dating relationship. Okay, this is your boyfriend. You might say, after he just snapped out, destroyed the entire living room, he's been yelling at you, he gripped you up, and you were going to call the police, but you let it go because you sat for a while, you cried it out, and now you realize he was having a very bad day. Okay, this is usually the excuses that I get in session. He had a very bad day. He just got a new job. His mom is in the hospital. His dad just moved out of the country. Excuse me. And here I am making another demand, and I just set him off. It's my fault. I set him off because I don't like being pressured either. I remember when I was pressured in 1950. I don't want to do that to him, and I understand how that feels. So it was my fault, not his fault. And so that is basically how that goes. It's this over-identification with the abuser. And in a very interesting way, you kind of bring this big situation that's traumatic down to this little mustard seed. And you say, you know what, it was my fault. Or that was me when I was 17. And so that's what's scary about Stockholm Syndrome and also traumatic bonding. There's an over-identification with the abuser. I know you know what I'm talking about, Michelle Lynn. It's very, very scary, right? Sammy D, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. We're going to jump into the content in just a minute here. Cheyenne says, my ex-girlfriend was 42 and I am 27. My goodness, the age difference there. Do you think there is a power differential? 100%. 100%. There would be a power differential with you and me. I at least have, you're 27. Yeah, I have 10 years on you. And I know there are some women who do like younger men. I'm not one of them. So, anytime I see someone who's older dating a younger man or vice versa, I usually question. I'm like, why? You know what I mean? Like, don't you want somebody who's at least older than you maybe or at your same age level? You know what I mean? There's definitely a power differential there because somebody who's older than you has most likely been here longer. And if you go back to childhood in your mind and do the age difference there, then you can see the power differential sometimes much clearer. You know what I mean? Like if, for example, let's say that you were 17. So if she's 42, do the math for me, guys. I'm terrible at math. Excuse me. I'm so bad at math. But let's say you're 17 and she's 27, right? That's a huge power differential. You're 17 just trying to figure out who you are, what shoes you want to wear tomorrow. And she's 27, most likely has graduated college, most likely has her own apartment, most likely, right? So, yes, there's definitely a power differential there for sure. And I think that's why sometimes younger men and younger girls, they get manipulated. Because the older partner, not always, the older partner in some situations, they know that there's a power differential. And that's why they're dating you in the first place.
I agree with what she just said. And I also want to throw in that I believe, now this is my opinion, based on the research I've been doing and what I've been reading into, There's a group of people in the world that are born with cognitive delay, cognitive injury. So their cognitive brain is not working the way that it could be. Now, when it comes to that affects, I guess you could say, like our personality, like so many areas that the cognitive brain is responsible for. Now, what I've learned in people that struggle with attention deficit disorder, ADHD, was it schizophrenia? It's a few disorders out there where those people can relate more with younger people because their cognitive is immature. It is probably that of a young person. So if you I'll use myself. I'm 40 years old, diagnosed with ADHD, which turned into oppositional defiance, unfortunately. But I've learned out of certain behaviors. When it comes to my husband that I'm with, he's in his 40s as well. In a lot of ways, I when I first met him, I was nowhere near what I needed to be as far as like emotional fluency. I was a highly sensitive woman, still am. But I could relate more to, I guess you could say, someone like 40. I can still relate to people that's in their 20s, teens too. I mean, outside of the fact that we all have a childhood and we can always tap in our inner child, but it's deeper than that for me. It's deeper than just tapping into my inner child. Because of my challenges and my gifts, it causes me to be able to live in moments more. I experience more euphoria than a lot of the adults that were in my circle. So where I'm a lot more bubbly when people experience me, a lot more uplifting, more positive. I leave with curiosity. And it was not a lot of people that did that. So that's when it comes to people with like attention deficit and stuff, this is in what ways we stand out. When it comes to our cognitive lack thereof, especially. So it winds up, a lot of guys will wind up struggling. For example, I know a young man who was 17 at the time. He was dating a 17-year-old. I believe she was going to be 18 soon. She's very responsible. She was working, finishing high school. She was reliable. Like her mother could rely on her to, give her a key, do good by the house, all that. Do you know that this young man, hooked up with her, had his little fun or whatever, and broke up with her? I had a talk with this young man asking him, why would you do that? She had all the ingredients that, you needed or could benefit off of as a young guy. This young man's words to me was, I ain't ready for her. He said, honestly, I should have met her I should meet her when I'm like 32. I was like, really? Tell me more. What do you mean by that? He was like, I can tell after, experiencing her that I'm actually immature. I was like, look at that. And he was 17. You got some grown men that can't say that. And yes, I want to just not name people, but yeah, 17-year-old young man was able to figure that out and broke up with the girl before he knew he was going to cheat. Just imagine if all of us could lead with that kind of honesty versus just sitting there, have your cake and eat it too. So even though I was disappointed in a way, because, honestly, I don't really think young people should be hurrying up into relationships. You need that time to learn who you are. And then in what ways your parents that messed you up trying to do a good job. I'm not coming for the parents. I'm just being realistic. We all do the best we can. But how many of us are traumatized and ain't missing some stuff? We can't give them what we ain't got. So even though we raising them the best we can, they're still going to wind up with injury. That's just what it is. So that would be wonderful if kids could just, kind of slow down and understand themselves in that kind of a way, like that young man realized. And ever since that, he has not dated another girl that was mature. Because she didn't have cognitive injury. Not to the extent of like a deficit, ADD, and, you know, things like that. She had other challenges, you know, depression for sure. Some other challenges there, no doubt. But he, from after her, all the girls that he was dating were either had an attention deficit, were bipolar, he's dating girls that have cognitive delay, some type of emotional challenges. So then I had to ask another question. What's going on here? You ain't a predator, are you? What's going like those girls made him feel like he would bring something to the table. Let's think about this. I know sometimes I don't explain things the best way I could. Bear with me, you guys. Really think about this. That this 17-year-old kid, well, he's older now, but this 17-year-old kid at the time had a girl that was more like her strengths, responsible, time management, all of that stuff. She had her, you know, negatives, but was called, when it comes to responsible, she was. He didn't switch to dating girls that were irresponsible, impulsive, sexually impulsive, and codependent. Those girls made him feel needed. Now, what does that say? That should say a lot to you. I ain't going to try to... That should speak volumes. So how many men you think out here that have ADHD that aren't able to show up for like a woman that don't have ADHD? A woman that's cognitively popping, she on point, time management's good. This woman, she's masculine when she needs to be, but she know how to click into her feminine. That's intimidating for a man that's struggling cognitively. My opinion. That's an intimidating situation. Every one of her strengths is his weakness. And if you're traditional, the man is the leader. How he finna lead and his woman more on point than he is? Why not find a girl that's struggling in the same way? That way they can live on survival mode, my opinion. That way he can feel like he has a leadership role in that relationship. That's just something I put together. It makes perfect sense. And I had to experience myself. These are the kind of guys I believe that are dating teenage girls. And hey, don't kill the messenger. Listen, I really believe this. So if you got like a teenage daughter, or unfortunately we can go as low as 9 years old, or probably even 8. So from 8 to about 19 years old. Guys that might be 20 to like 30, even 40, they have cognitive injury, they'll get young girls like that. Because women make them feel ineffective that don't have cognitive injury. Look into it. You know what I'm saying? Look into it and really peep game. You have to peep game in a way you ain't never peeped it before. Like sometimes you gotta chuck that old script, especially if it ain't working no more, and read into some information and really peep game. You better put some stuff together.
That's something to think about, right, Shan? Adila says, so it's a cyclical. Yeah, it is. Roller coaster, a love and hate with a parent. Love and hate with a parent, and love and hate with a friend, a spouse, the list goes on. All right, you're going to be my last one before we go back to the content. Let's go down the road of cognitive distortions first, and then I'm going to give you common behaviors. Cognitive distortions are this, and you guys let me know in the chat box if you've ever experienced any of these. Cognitive distortions are skewed and sometimes imbalanced ways that we see ourselves and that we see our situations. We see our interactions with the world. You know, they are basically the negative thoughts that go through your mind. You know, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. How could I let that happen? Right? Why didn't I do anything about it? Why did I allow this bond? How did I get so bonded? I'm always making mistakes, right? All those negative thoughts can fill your mind, and they can go over and over and over in your mind to a point of obsession or rumination. And that can sink your mind. It can sink your heart. It can sink your stamina.
Yeah.
Because something that's an obsession or that's a rumination it never gives you a break, right?
I was doing that
those
too.
negative thoughts become a part of you. Well, a cognitive distortion is similar, but what it does for the most part, for most people, I would say, is it kind of keeps you stuck in this negative bowl of toxicity. An example of a cognitive distortion would be something known as mind reading. So your narcissistic mother, who's very covert, she likes things to be prim and proper. You know, she doesn't like you to look out of place, wants you not to speak a certain way. She has her demands, right? So let's say you're sitting with your mom, you guys are doing something together, right? It could be talking to somebody, it could be, you're just over for Sunday brunch or whatever. And you may look at your mom and believe 100% that you know what she's thinking about you just by looking at her. You may be wrong, but then you may be right. Who knows? But the cognitive distortion in this example is mind reading, that I'm looking at my mom and I think I know exactly what she's thinking about me. She's thinking that I'm a failure. She's thinking that I don't deserve. She's thinking that I'm not very intelligent, mature, the list goes on. So that's one example of cognitive distortion, mind reading. Well, if you're in a toxic, unhealthy bond, primarily a trauma bond, it is possible that you can actually look at that person who's destroying you and believe that you are reading from their face, from their disposition, from their passive aggressive communication with you, that they're angry, they need your forgiveness, and that you were supposed to give them a green light. That's an example of that.
I did that as well. Free advice. If you grew up and you had to constantly scan to make sure things are safe, and by scan I mean look into behavior and face expressions to make sure that the abuser or the questionable person wasn't upset. That's what I mean by scanning. And that's what she's talking about when it comes to like hypervigilance. As little kids, we don't learn out of that. If no one knows the verbiage to call it that and catch us doing it, no one's teaching us to stop doing it by adulthood. That actually turns our anxiety on. This is what I've learned. So don't mistake it for intuition. Oh, you got a gut feeling. That's got nothing to do with being hypervigilant. This is what I'm learning in therapy too. Apparently, I was doing that with my husband. And that comes from my trauma. So that's things that I'm working out as I work on myself and improve myself when it comes to how I communicate. Because I was pretty massively abused and talked down on. So I would constantly be looking for certain behavior or face expressions to see, okay, it's safe for me to talk. Okay, maybe it ain't safe for me to talk. And a lot of the times I would work myself up, and sometimes I was wrong about what I was perceiving. So it's not a system that is completely reliable, is what I'm getting to. So if you do that, you might want to look into getting yourself some help.
I once had a client who would always look at her husband when he was angry. She said, and I can look at him and see that he needed me to forgive him. That wasn't the case. But her skewed awareness of her relationship and this toxic bond caused her to believe that she understood things. She did not. It was more of a desire and a wish of hers. It wasn't a reality. Another example of a cognitive distortion would be generalization. This happened to me over there. So if I go over here, it's likely going to happen to me over here as well. Generalization. It's the same kind of unhealthy thought process that we just talked about, and it kind of keeps you stuck. It keeps you blind. Now, what are some common behaviors, though, that creates that trauma bond? Research in psychology says rationalization. Rationalization is something that can kind of keep you stuck in those trauma bonds. Why? Because if you rationalize and you minimize, it's a little bit easier to deal with that bond than it would be if you just were to look at it as it is. We have to also keep in mind that the abuser, the mother, the father, the spouse, the friend, whoever the abuser is in this unhealthy bond, we have to keep in mind that they also They have tools and tricks and tactics that they use to keep you stuck. One, and you guys tell me in the chat box if you've dealt with this, one is love bombing. Don't you hear that all the time? All the time. I know I do. I have clients come into session with me and they're like, I think my boyfriend is love bombing me and now he's gaslighting me. And I'm like, oh God, here we go with these terms again. But a lot of people really do, on a serious note, in these kind of trauma bonds or unhealthy bonds, family bonds, I'm going to say also toxic bonds, they do feel like the abuser is giving and loving and showering them with affection. And, it's just way too much giving. And basically that is to maintain some kind of relationship with you, I'm just going to give them everything that they want from me until I stop, right? So love bombing is a way that they kind of keep you stuck. Another common behavior that psychology points out is
random groceries.
You may find that
fucking buying you shit
the abuser in that bond has always had either mental health problems or a personality disorder or something of the kind, maybe both. You may find that they have a problem. But because you're in this unhealthy bond with them, you're starting to feel depressed. You're starting to feel very anxious.
God.
You're starting to feel very afraid.
Couldn't get over here fast enough. She is on point. You understand? She might as well be a pencil. She's so on point. That's exactly what happened to me. Exactly. I was feeling everything from the closest relationships of mine when it comes to how they were feeling. I'm a Sigma empathic woman, highly sensitive, and I value deep connections. That's all I needed to be to go around that and just be sinking with them. Had no clue that's why I was feeling so terrible. And I'm like, I'm just visiting, a family member I love and this and that. And I'm over here, the energy's off. So I'll speak on certain things. Then they'll invalidate me. Oh, I ain't that. You this and this, you that. You trying to be this. I'm like, oh, well, don't shoot the sheriff. I'm just asking a question. And a simple question I ask, they get irate. All flipped out of, they all discombobulated just because I asked a question about their emotional status. That's another red flag. If you ask someone how they feeling and they answer you with a question or they abort the question, try to change the subject, red flag. Don't let them play in your face.
And abused, right? And so the abuser can sense that sometimes. And so what do? Research in psychology says on trauma bonds that they often intentionally put a trauma bond into motion, right? They treat you extra nice, again, until they get tired of it, and then they go back to abusing you. So research in psychology says love bombing does happen, I'm so sorry, guys. Gaslighting, I'm thinking about something else at the same time. Gaslighting happens, sucking up happens, trying to build some kind of trust and dependency, that happens. You may also see criticism that happens in this kind of a toxic bond. You're also going to see, somebody who's going to run to your rescue and protect you. This is how an abuser creates the trauma bond intentionally. They know how to repair what they have done. Does that make sense, guys? Let me get a sip. My throat's getting dry again.
Yes, they do. Yes, they
I
do.
am sorry. Okay, so I know that most of you have most likely seen this, that there's often a back and a forth. And so research suggests that this back and forth between the abuser and you really does bind you. And it makes it really difficult to not only see the abuse, but get out of the bond. Let me tell you the story briefly about the family that I had so many years ago. I felt so sad for this young man. He was 14, came to me when he was 9, but mom's mental health got worse over time.
Jameer.
So he came to me for his own anxiety, his own depression. We treated him for 2 years, myself and a colleague who was prescribing medication. And he seemed to be doing really well. Well, all of a sudden, after his 14th birthday, he started, complaining of wanting to take his own life. He started complaining about failing in school. The teachers were calling his parents every day. He was getting suspended. He was really refusing to do his work. He wasn't being cooperative. Then he started cutting. He attempted suicide. There was a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression. And one time, I asked him, he showed me something on his phone. He wanted to show me a poster he got in his bedroom. And he's showing me this poster. But as he's showing me the poster on his bedroom wall, he moves the video camera, which was his phone. But he moves the phone. And on his phone, not only do I see the poster on the wall, but I also see a room that is completely trashed. And I asked him, I says, why are your curtains hanging off the window like that? And what's all the garbage in your room? And why is there glass? And I saw his bed ripped to shreds, his dresser, what do you call those things? His dresser drawers were open. Some of them were hanging out of the dresser. There was red fingerprints on the wall, like somebody had lipstick. And I said, what is happening here? And, he immediately broke down and started crying. And I remember going over to him to comfort him. And I'm thinking, this is a 14-year-old boy. What is going on? And I said, you've got to talk to me. And he says, the reason I haven't talked to you is my mom told me that if I tell anybody how I was living, how my mom was raising me, that I would be put in foster care and taken away. He says, and even though my mom's very abusive, I don't want to be taken away from her. So they had this very enmeshed emotional bond that was not okay. Mom sought reassurance and support from this young man. She parentified him. Guys, we talk about this all the time. There was also adultification, so he became an adult way faster than he should have. And she would talk to him like he was her therapist. And it was a total power differential there, guys. It was a total emotional extortion or emotional exploit.
Well, I had an experience similar to this. And it is the saddest thing to see when a mother or a father is taking away their child's childhood by default or deliberately on purpose. I don't know how many kids I've tried to assist to have their childhood while it was being ripped from them at the same time. It's very heartbreaking. And the parent that's doing it is struggling, no doubt, with their own mental health problems that they're not facing. So now every time that child tries to communicate with the parent and they communicate and the parent communicates in ways that are traumatic, aggressive, or just completely absent, the child stops going to the parent now. This is where the rebel begins. This is where you see the behavior in school getting worse, where it wasn't before. This is where you see them being less attentive. This is where you see them being rebellious more and more or breaking curfew. This is because directly they don't have an available parent. They don't have an accountable parent. Whenever something goes wrong, the parent finds some way to blame it on the children or that child. So after a while, the kid stops trying. And it broke my heart when I seen it more than twice. It's a problem, and I'll always speak up for children. Even inner children of adults that's completely ignorant that they walking around here with unpacked trauma. And judging me because I'm unpacking mine. But you need to do your work. Because if you do your work, then maybe you'll have a better outcome in your life. Versus ruined relationship after ruined relationship after ruined relationship after ruined relationship after You can't keep changing the people in your life and think it's the people and not you. Like, how many relationships you going to start that's brand new that's going to keep failing before you realize maybe I should slow down on the relationships and start improving the one with myself, because you're damaging these relationships. and you're just going through life as a bowling ball, knocking pins down. And the pins are the people that are just thinking you're well enough to be in a relationship. Stop fooling ourselves. We must. It is our duty. Our kids are watching, for God's sake. And the astrology work that I'm doing, first of all, before trauma even gets a hold of us, we show up astrologically with certain character traits. We show up because God created us certain ways. And then we got free will. Trauma, of course, and circumstances start tweaking that. We have to do better with our self-awareness and with raising children. Chuck your pride. That way your child has a fighting chance. It's hard to watch force-rape children.
Exploitation, I'll put it that way. Because she knew exactly what was going to happen. That he was going to tell someone and cry about it, and she didn't want that to happen because then she'd get in trouble. But that's not even the meat of the story with this young man. Because once I asked him, how did your room get this way? He said, my mom did it. My mom had a really bad night with her boyfriend. They were arguing. She was drunk. She came in my room while I was asleep, and she tore it to shreds. And that is her lipstick on my wall. And he said to me, and she told me not to tell you, and not to tell a teacher or anybody that could get her in trouble. Trauma bond. Very overly enmeshed bond. And when I was able to speak with mom, she was very irate, very upset, very disrespectful to me. Thankfully, there was a father involved who kept this young man in treatment, but the emotional bond between he and his mom was very inappropriate. And there were some concerns about incest. There were some concerns about child sexual abuse in this case. But there was a cycle, and this is why I'm mentioning this as an example. There was a cycle of love bombing. There was a cycle of gaslighting. You're not seeing what you think you're seeing. Mom's going to buy you that video game you've been wanting. So do your best at school and don't mention anything to your therapist. He was a smart boy. He recorded her telling him that. Don't say anything to your therapist. So there was love bombing, there was gaslighting, there was trust and dependency being developed over time between the two of them. There was also what we call love addiction. So in a sense, there was a dependency that was, I need my mom's love and affection. So there was a little bit of love addiction there. There was also devaluation and criticism that was in there as well. There was also a loss of self with this young man. So these are all examples of how a traumatic, unhealthy, toxic bond can kind of keep you stuck, right? Because little by little, that relationship starts to unfold, and then you can see over time that, oh my goodness, right? You're probably going to step back and say, oh my goodness, I have been manipulated. I have been exploited for all this time, and I never saw it coming. It's not easy to see those different experiences. It's not easy to see them when they are happening. Usually you identify them at the very end, after you've become a victim. So let me go over them one more time. I'm going to give you the research. I'm going to take a break and then talk to you guys in the chat box. But
she's on point. After all my suffering and becoming a victim, it would have been nice if my abuser would have let me know in what ways he totally screwed me. That way I wouldn't be silly putty in the hands of every other person that has abused and manipulated me moving forward. That's the thing. After I realized that I was coached as a child, which, like I did say in earlier videos, I was really resisting it. My therapist brought it up. It was at least 2 to 3 sessions, and it didn't sink in till the third one, which I definitely cried in the office. Learning that someone so important in your childhood coached you and didn't tell you and didn't tell anyone else. So how I'm showing up, that makes no sense to no one but him and me, because I know what I was told or intimidated into doing, is a very hard thing. And it was earlier on. So it was very hard for me as someone that was victimized by an important person in my life. So if I can encourage anyone out there, excuse me, anything at all, if this has happened to you, please get yourself some help. Even more so if you're raising children, please get yourself some help. Because you will not be able to hide from your kids. You will not be able to avoid ruining them by accident. We're going to play the game the way we was taught to play it. And how I was taught to play the game called life would have never worked for the type of lifestyle me and my husband created for our children. I had to learn out of those ways. And that caused me to create certain distance between certain family members that had me in their control in certain ways. But through trauma bonds, this is not healthy. I would absolutely still entertain certain relationships with certain family members that I don't see as much anymore. I don't have any hard feelings towards them. Not now, at least. But I did. I was very angry. Very angry. But I'm not someone that would go rumbling and fighting my family members. I don't even like to see stuff like that happen. If anything, I'd give a respectful distance and do my self-work, which is what I've been doing. So even my family members probably watching these videos and like, is this Kiki? Like, yeah, this me. What's up? Yeah, they're surprised. And I'm not surprised because this was not how I was showing up before. I was more so, I guess you could say, like the court gesture, the class clown, the big Barney family member, the one that's just for euphoria. I bring games and card games, want to play with the kid. Like I wasn't as serious. You understand what I'm saying? Because I partly didn't know how to be. It was a lot of things I was struggling with when it comes to my character. You see, I was gifted that I'm a whore. This is what I've been told, based on my behavior. So with me assuming I'm a whore and not feeling that I'm a whore, so I didn't really never own it. It just was told to me so much. And I'm like, is this the way to be? Because if you're calling me that and I'm still a virgin and I know you having sex, what is a whore really? But I didn't ask that question. I didn't know how to put it in a question form. It just was more so like, huh? I was very easily confused, which is what they were banking on, no doubt. So you have to know. You have to know and put yourself in the know. You know what I'm saying? So you can have some type of fighting chance out here. Because it could get real.
Let's go over them one more time. So there's love bombing. There's a development of trust and dependency. You can also look at these as stages. And this is what happens. Let me clarify. This is what happens when you're becoming too enmeshed. You're becoming too close. A bond is unhealthy. So there's love bombing, trust and dependency. There's criticism and devaluation. There's a loss of self. There's love addiction, right? There's rationalizing and minimizing. There's manipulation. Did I say gaslighting? I think I did. There's manipulation. And there is also emotional extortion. And those are the stages that most people end up going through as they're developing. Sometimes you're developing a bond and don't even realize it. As they're developing this bond, a lot of people fail to see these stages. And so you may want to take this down as stages. Now, let me tell you about the research just briefly before I go to the chat box. Some research suggests that there is such complexity in trying to identify these stages of bonding that we are lacking in research. We need way more research on what happens between a mother and a son, a mother and a daughter, a father and his children. What happens in that bond? What happens in the toxic family bond? What happens in the romantic bonds, right? And so we're missing a lot of research just because of the complexity of these stages of bonding and how they get started and how complicated it is to kind of unwind you from that bond, you know? So we need way more research. Some research that I was looking at last night also suggested that traumatic bonding seemed to get worse around COVID time. I don't think that's pretty shocking. What do you guys think? It was being in the house all the time, not being able to go anywhere, fearing that you were going to be sick, right? Not having anywhere to really go because all the things that we're used to was closing early. So in that entire scenario, traumatic bonding and other healthy, relationship bonds were becoming an issue. And so it increased during the time of COVID. And that is a very scary part, There's also some research that says that if you have some kind of love dependency, so in other words, I am dependent upon other people loving me to feel A, B, and C, or I need this person to come into my world because I need to be loved and I need to feel love, that seemed to increase as well over COVID time. And this is according to research in, I'll post it in the description box for you, but this is on research around intimate partner violence. Okay guys, let me go to the chat box to take a little bit of a break here, and then we're going to talk about how does this impact you, and then we can go from there. Oh, okay. I'm going to mess this up again. Francophile Patine.
Hey!
You have to
you have my massage gun, y'all?
Hello and welcome,
I be
by
getting
the way,
it
to
cracking.
tonight's live chat.
Gotta take care of yourself,
you are
huh?
responding to Cheyenne. So we're going to go to a different comment.
Preach, girl.
Graham Langley, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. And welcome to the channel. I don't remember seeing you. I feel a little off tonight, so forgive me. Hopefully I'm more myself in tomorrow's live chat. Graham says, oh yes, I am a victim of that 6-week thing. Blow up argument, silence treatment, then 6 weeks later. How are you going? Okay, let's hug it out. Okay, I see what you're saying. It's a little choppy, but you're saying you're a part of that as well, right? That dynamic where they do something to you and then they come back and they're like ready to be nice to you and love you and care for you. Honestly, it's up to you as to whether or not you're going to accept that disposition, or if you're going to accept it temporarily and talk to them later. You know what I mean? I've had people do that to me. I've had clients do that to me, a couple years ago, I had a client whose mom was very psychologically unstable. And she not only was a problem for her children, but she was also a problem for me, and also a problem for her husband, and a problem for every other therapist in the world, because she did not want to get help. She had a lot of issues, including paranoid schizophrenia. She would not take her medication. I don't know if you guys, a lot of you probably haven't heard my story yet, but I'll just briefly let you know that there was a situation with me back in 2016, when I was in a group private practice. It was 5 or 6 of us in a practice, and I had sadly become the victim of stalking because, very briefly, I'm going to tell you, just so you can have a little bit of an idea as to what I'm talking about. There was a mother, she was very sick, had paranoid schizophrenia, hadn't been sleeping, she was on marijuana really heavily, on alcohol very heavily. She became homeless, her husband filed for divorce, and her children were asked to come to me by the grandmother for therapy. And this mother found out that I was the child's therapist. She looked me up online, immediately got intimidated and just really jealous. She couldn't understand, why do my kids get excited to see you and they never get excited to see me? And I invited her into a session to give her some insights, and it turned into her calling me throughout many times of the day for no reason, sometimes ringing the group practice phone and asking for me and then hanging up. Then she started parking in the parking lot to watch me get in my car. She started calling me on my work cell phone. She got it from one of her kids. It was an awful situation for a few months. And I completely just got drained from the whole encounter. Well, let me say, this is the same person who needs a lot of help even to this day. So I've heard from a colleague. And what would happen in that dynamic is she would step out and do all of these bizarre, weird things that was unhealthy and sometimes illegal, but then come to session or be in the waiting room and act like nothing ever happened. And so it was up to me whether or not I was going to accept that and say, you know what, let's just act like nothing ever happened. You didn't see me go to my car several times in the day. We're going to act like you didn't call me 1,900 times last night while I was trying to sleep. We're not going to acknowledge that. So it was up to me. Am I going to ignore it with her, or am I going to acknowledge it? And I decided to acknowledge it. So long story short, Graham, that's the decision that you have to make. Am I going to act like you're not bypassing my boundaries? Am I going to act as if you're, stable? Or am I going to address you? And so that's something you gotta figure out, right? Thank you, Juby. I hope that was helpful. Juby Joe, thank you so much for that. Yeah, thank you. I can't kick these symptoms. I'm really trying. Jessica J says, in-laws have always treated my husband, their son, as if he is 12, showing no respect for what he's accomplished in his life. Yeah, absolutely. Jessica J, from, I think it was last chat or so, I think I said, if you have somebody who doesn't seem to mature and they keep doing the same things over time, most likely it's a personality disorder. So I wouldn't be surprised if the in-laws also have personality disorders, Oh, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much. I do have emergency C. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Thank you. My mom was like, why don't you use this big, she has like this big, literally, I'm going to show it to you guys one day, this big water bottle. And I'm like, how do you even, okay, never mind. But she had tons of emergency C in there. So maybe I can grab some. Thank you so much, Ken. I appreciate you for that. You guys are trying to take care of me now. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Girl Mom, hello. Welcome. Good to see you. Sorara, thank you so much for that tip. You guys are lovely. Thank you so much. Welcome. Good to see you, Sorara. Let me keep moving. I'm looking for comments. M.N. Odell and J.D. Merritt Master Group and Mark Lee, hello and welcome. Glad to see you. Thank you so much for all the tips, guys. I'm going to come back when this live chat when we sign off, and I'm going to write down all these tips. Thank you. Pure Blue 22, hello and welcome. Good to see you and welcome to the channel. Pure Blue 22 says, yeah, I feel like my nervous system is fried. Yeah, absolutely. You're probably burned out. That's the term, burned out. Orlando, I always love that passage. Yep, they're going to reap what they sow. As a kid, I used to say they're going to sow what they reap. My mom's like, oh my God, that's not how you say it. But yes, I do believe people reap what they sow. Yeah. Sorara says, separating from my family has ripped the Band-Aid off feelings I thought were long resolved. I can't even call it anxiety, just orienting, like falling into a pit backwards. How do children survive? Wow, that's a very painful thing. I will say it is disorienting, isn't it? Yeah, I agree with that. The best way to deal with that, Sorara, is to do it the way you're doing it. And for those of you who are also watching, this is for you as well, that anytime you're dealing with a bond of any kind and you try to step out of that bond, just know that there's going to be some kind of fallout, if you will, some kind of consequence that's going to make you feel like either you didn't make the best decision, either you jumped to the wrong decision too soon, right? I can't survive kind of mentality is most likely going to occur. There's going to be a variety of emotional and psychological experiences that you're going to go through. You know, it's almost like once you jump out of the lion's den, now you've got to figure out how to survive. And Sorara, that is a very difficult thing to do. So you've got to do some introspection and ask yourself for the next couple of days, weeks, and maybe months and years, where do I need to be? And do I feel like my decision has been the most beneficial, right? So, and you may have to repair some bonds as well. And that is okay too, you know? It's hard to step out of a bond. It is. It is.
Yes, it is.
I like it. It's mine.
And just to give you some history, the bonds that I had to step out of were very difficult because they were family. They are family. And when you have to cut a family bond, that's a trauma bond, that hurts. Because of the fact that that's my family member, it feels wrong to do it. It really does, especially if they don't want to leave, or if they don't see a problem or whatever. It's even harder. So for me, that was my experience. It was certain people that, you know, I didn't necessarily say, oh, well, I'm not going to come around as much. I just simply stopped. And there was no call. There was no, I miss you. So I learned, okay, so that relationship was going because of me. Sometimes you got to pay attention to that.
Will be criticized, and then the rage kicks in for hours. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have young people now that come and see me, kids, adolescents, young adults who say that the parents are that way. If I say anything, there's going to be this huge explosion. My colleague is now dealing with a situation where she has a family that every time the mother acts out, because the mother in this scenario is not stable, every time the mother acts out, she causes her children to regress, you know? And we're not talking, I'm angry and I'm crying. We're not talking, I just slammed the door because I'm frustrated. We're talking things like, I'm going to kill myself and you're going to be regretful once I do. That's an example of something that she has said. Another example would be something like, I hope you enjoy when I finally take my life because you're going to push me there. Things like that are being said, and it's causing the children to feel insecure. It's causing the children to be afraid. And so do you think her kids want to go to her and say, Mom, I was just suspended today because I had to stand up for myself. Somebody punched me and I had to stand up for myself. He's not going to tell her that, right? Because we're going to have another big explosion. And unfortunately, these kids know very well that Mom's going to explode, so I'm not going to say anything, you know? So you're very right. That is a definite dynamic, and it's a very scary one. Yeah. Trauma survivor says, I can relate. I was counting on my extended family to love and care for me and to finally have a family home, but only to be seemingly denied of that, all because they raised my brother and not me. Yeah, you mention that all the time. And that just seems like something that is stuck for you. And it's like stuck in your heart and in your mind. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there to heal, you know? I think you and I talked about it in one of my previous chats. Yeah. MS, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Excuse me. Okay. Excuse me, guys. MS says, thank you for covering this topic. You've given me a glimmer of hope and I'll happily take it. Oh, that's so good to know. Thank you for that. And you're welcome. MS goes on to say, I'll take this glimmer and expand it as I silently plan an exit from a family of psychopaths, narcissists, etc. Yeah, I totally understand that. Let me tell you, like I tell my clients, before you make the next move, really do some introspection and make sure that that's the right move. Because, and this is for you, Sarara, as well, because if you jump too fast at a resolution or at something that you think is a resolution, keep in mind, you may not be able to go back and fix it. So once you make that step, it will likely be final. Because research in psychology around family estrangement suggests this, that once you become estranged, that family you've left behind, or that relationship, is going to build new traditions. They're going to build new expectations. They're going to become most likely closer with each other. And you're going to be the one on the outside looking in. So you want to make sure before you make that step that you're doing the right thing. And it takes a very long time sometimes to make that, to make that decision in a way that is wise and healthy. Leslie A., hello and welcome. Glad to see you in a live chat tonight. She says, that's my mother. Yep. It's very hard when it's your mother, isn't it? Yeah. As Elizabeth Pepper, hello and welcome. Good to see you in tonight's live chat. Elizabeth Pepper says, it wasn't until I learned of the impact of trauma in neurodevelopmental stages that I was able to develop self-compassion and stop chronic self-blaming. All victims should really learn about it. Yeah, that's an important point. I appreciate you for bringing that up. Not everybody has challenges during the neurodevelopmental stage. We know that, right, Elizabeth Pepper? But is it good to go, pick up a book that can maybe help you with that? Yes. A book that can kind of guide you a little bit is by Dr. Perry. It's The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. So if you type in Dr. Perry, Perry, the Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, that's one example. That's one book that talks about neurodevelopmental levels and how the brain and the mind and the central nervous system can all work together to create a very complicated person, and he does a great job in kind of breaking this down in layman terms, right? He doesn't use a lot of big words. So go ahead and check that book out. I think it's a wonderful book. Sylvia Love Jones, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. Yes, you're welcome, Sammy D. You're welcome. Michelle Lynn says, Tamara, you described that perfectly. Thank you. You're so awesome. Thank you so much. And you're awesome too. You're awesome too. I like all of you. I'm like, I should adopt every last one of you, but I'm sure you wouldn't want to live with me. Okay, especially with this virus, because I'm getting everybody sick, to be honest. KD Merit Master Group. There was a comment that you said earlier. I want to go back to it. I have to find it. So I'm not going to say anything here because I feel like I'm coming in on a weird comment. Like I'm not getting the first half of that. So I'm going to skip that, okay? All right, let me find you. Orlando, you're hilarious. Orlando says, Tamara, what's a good age difference between men and women? I don't know. I can only speak for me, personally. I certainly wouldn't be interested in anyone who's like 27, like Cheyenne, right? Like, what Cheyenne is asking me is that a power differential? And if I look at that, yes, because somebody who's 27 may not be somebody who has experienced certain patterns in life that maybe a 37-year-old would. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would be a healthy age difference. I'm not going to profess to... I'm not going to put myself out there, I'll put it that way, and say that there is a perfect age. But you do want to consider that power differential, right? Because let me just say this as well, in regards to this, that a bond between two people could be at any age, right? However, you almost have to ask in the back of your mind, what does a 42-year-old see in a 27-year-old? Because the 42-year-old probably just wants, for lack of a clinical term, a boy toy, or they want to be young because they're not ready to grow up, or there's something going on there psychologically that makes them attracted to a 27-year-old, right? I once had a client who was 45, and she was dating a 21-year-old and had no shame about it, But the power differential there was he had a mother figure, and she had the little boy that she could not biologically bear. So there you have it. They both got their needs met, but in odd ways. So without getting into this whole thing, it's complicated. I'll leave it at that. Live life. It has been a while. So missed you on the channel. So glad to have you back. As you say, it's great to be back. So appreciate all your comments. I was going through a previous live chat, and then guys, I'm getting back into the content. I was going through a previous live chat, and I saw you, and I'm like, where's Live Life? Oh my God. So good to see you.
If you're an adult and you know a teenager that's dating someone that's in their late 20s and older, your mentorship should be kicking in. You got to tell them what to do. Challenge their intellect. Trust me, I work well with children. Just challenge them. Ask them questions that's going to trigger thinking where they probably would be more impulsive. Because if they see nothing wrong with it, if you proceed saying, oh, they're too old for you, stop seeing them, is against the law. If they're rebellious, they're going to do it anyway. Start talking to them in ways where they can hear it. Like, oh, how old is they? Oh, they got a total advantage on you. Like, say things that's going to get, what makes you say that? I'm glad you asked. Like, find a way to get them curious so you can have a conversation with them about it versus scalding them, especially if they came from trauma. It wasn't no good judgment in that situation, depending on the type of trauma they were exposed to, let alone if it is their parents. So just think about these things. We can help more than what we think.
For you as well. Good to see you. Mr. Ellipsis says, you mentioned cognitive distortion and mind reading. My mom used to do this all the time, so much, I think she actually read it one time. LOL. Great topic, Tim. Thank you so much for that. She may have. There's psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissists who go straight to Barnes and Noble. They go straight to Amazon. They pick out the books that they're going to read. And then they, like acting as if they're some kind of therapist or professional. That is often a manipulation tool that they use. But also, let me say here, a cognitive distortion, it can also, the cognitive distortion of mind reading can also be a good thing in some ways, because it kind of causes you to pause for a second and try to pick up on what that other person is, maybe giving off, what's the vibe of this other person. So sometimes looking at somebody and kind of mind reading, if you will, there is a positive side to that. I meant to mention that earlier. Not all cognitive distortions are bad, but it's when and how you use them that's the problem. I hope that makes sense.
Sorry, y'all, I'm impulsive.
Ain't
she on point, though?
I'm going to mention one more thing about cognitive distortions, that if you are in a bond that is toxic, it's possible that the distortion of black or white thinking, or we call it polarization. Black or white thinking or polarization. We can call it either or. There's a possibility that you can get stuck in that bond because of black and white thinking, right? Let's say, for example, you're in a relationship with somebody, right? You're engaged to be married, but here's the problem. He gets upset, you get upset, both of you yell at each other, and it is not a good thing because you wanted to call off the wedding several different times, right? So this is an example for you. Let's say you, as the one who really wants this wedding, you start seeing things in black and white terms, and you start making excuses. There's no gray area. It's either A or B. It's either that or this. There's no in between. And so that cognitive distortion of polarization or black and white thinking can really keep you narrow. And sadly, sometimes it keeps you bonded to the abuser. And it may make it really hard for you to just walk away. That happens a lot. A lot more than we think it does.
Yep.
All right. NGO, hello and welcome. Glad to see you in tonight's live chat. I'm looking for one more comment. Okay, before I go back to the content, Lord Fitz says, Yes, they discard you, then bring you back with love bombing when they feel that you are pulling away. Absolutely. Have you ever had a situation where the other person that you're in a bond with, for some reason, you don't have to show that you are backing away. You don't have to give any hints you're backing away. You don't even have to do anything to show them that you're backing away, but they just know it, you know? Have you ever been in a situation like that and you're like, man, how did you know I was getting tired of you, you know? Or you may say to yourself, how did you know that I was displeased with your behavior? We're spiritual and intuitive and feeling beings, right? So we get that. And I think a lot of people who use love bombing, they are very skilled in passive aggressive behaviors. So they understand. They get you. That was a very good point, Lorfit. I agree with that. I agree. NGO, last one. I'm going to go back to the content. NGO says guilt tripping. Yeah. Excuse me. Very much so. Very much so. Okay. Let's finish this out, guys. Okay. So how does this impact you? Well, when you are in a situation with somebody that you are in a very strong, toxic, dysfunctional bond with, you have that kind of a bond, you may lose the ability to objectively evaluate the abuse. You lose the ability to objectively evaluate the abuse. Why? Because you are in such a bond. You're in such a unhealthy dynamic that it's really hard for you to step back and look at the situation in a way that is healthy. That is why it is hard for women to be in intimate partner relationships where they're being domestically abused, or they're being manipulated or violated, or, you know, emotionally abused even. It's really hard for them to get out. Why? Because they can't objectively evaluate the situation. They're evaluating the situation based alone on their feelings and what they think, and sometimes even fatigue. Can you believe that? Sometimes even fatigue. That I'm so tired of fighting that if you want to love bomb me and give me all the flowers and the candies and all the hugs and kisses in the world, I'll just accept it, because now I'm tired. I'm exhausted, right? And so when you lose the ability to objectively relate or understand, then you just go with what's happening. And that can keep you in this back and forth dynamic that's not healthy for you. The other issue is broken bonds often become abusive bonds. Broken bonds often become abusive bonds. You don't have a very sturdy, steady, held together bond with your narcissistic mother. Well, down the line, it's probably going to become an abusive relationship. You're not close like this. You're only bonded because of maybe a few things. But that broken, loving, respectful, mutual bond is broken. And so down the line, it's likely to become an abusive one. There's probably going to be arguments. There's probably going to be confrontations. You are probably going to get tired and say things that you probably shouldn't say, and vice versa, right? So broken bonds often become abusive bonds. The other piece of this is you're likely to engage in traumatic reenactments or trauma reenactments. What this means is, let's say you grew up in a very traumatic, unhealthy family dynamic, and now you're an adult, you're trying to have a normal relationship with somebody else, and you find yourself kind of regressing into the ways that you used to behave. All those ways that maybe you grew out of, all of those ways that maybe you have matured past, Here they are stirring up again in this relationship. Why? Because it's called a trauma reenactment. I am now reacting into my current situation, all the things that I did in my family that destroyed it, or that destroyed me, right? So that's a trauma reenactment.
That's what I was doing. I was doing that too. Sorry. Having some tree nuts. I was reliving my trauma narrative. Ignorance. The unknown. This wasn't intentional. So when I went... I can laugh at it now, but it hurt my feelings in therapy. Oh my God. Boy, it was hard to not take it personal. To hear to hear how people experience me. I didn't have the ears for that. A lot of times because I was emotionally immature. So if someone was giving me, it could have been even constructive criticism. It hurt. They might as well have been talking about me like a dog, and it was constructive. I was, pretty much in tears at the end, but internal tears. I didn't know how to go outward. I always felt like I had to hide how I felt so my abuser wouldn't do anything to me. So I didn't learn how to express myself outwardly, which caused me to be socially awkward. Gotta love it. But that's definitely a thing that she's talking about. You see how many different ways trauma can just completely change us? And we just be ignorant to the fact. This is why I did this live. So you can start seeing that, okay, maybe I'm more damaged than I thought I was. Okay, so I might be affecting my kids in more ways than I think, in negative ways. So you can be intentional and do something about that versus be ignorant and continue to self-soothe and damage children that's growing up to be shooting buses up, robbing people. You see, the kids is getting out of control. It's because the parents are not in control. And we're talking about self-control. When you have self-control, you don't need to control anyone. You don't. You model what it is that you want to see, first of all. So if you don't like a bunch of yelling and screaming, guess what you should be doing? Talking and not yelling and screaming. You know how many people make that mistake? Especially with children. Little people can't hear that. They can't hear and listen when you're irate because children are more spiritual than adults. As they start losing their innocence more, as we all know, then this one sinister starts sliding in there. But ultimately, children are very spiritual beings. And us adults are teaching them a lot of ego so they can learn the way of this land. However, we need to start being more intentional on how we show up as parental teachers. And be okay to hear, okay, you didn't do so good here. Versus, now you're about to pull the violins out and start the speech. Oh, at the end of the day, if you a single mom, I'm a single mom. Ain't nobody over here helping me. I'm my kid's mom and dad. Yeah, by the way, stop saying that. Ladies, we're not men. This is my opinion. We are not men. Not no woman can replace a man. I'm going to repeat that. Bear with me. Get out your feelings. Get into your wise mind so you can hear this. Quit personalizing. No woman could ever replace a man, baby. No, you cannot. Can you do a man's job? Sure, you can do his job until it requires male masculinity. Can women mimic masculinity? Sure, we could create our own version of it. But this is not to be mistaken for a woman being able to do the job of a man when it comes to parenting, especially. No, you cannot. No, we cannot. Just like a father cannot replace a woman. And no, I'm not coming for the gay community. This is not about shaming and blaming and things of that sort. I read, I research, I have human experience. You understand what I'm saying? It's certain things that we get chemically from our mother and father. Certain things is passed down through DNA. It's certain things you cannot do unless you're that gender. It's just how God has created us. Period. You understand what I mean? Or are you lost? Huh? You lost? Now, to women that are single moms and they doing the best they can, I'm not coming for them either. But here's some free advice. First of all, my apologies that whatever happened in your life that caused the father to not be around. My apologies. That could have been, you could have seen that coming or not seen it coming. Either way, you're the one trying to do the best you can with the child. Find a mentor for your child that's a healthy, emotionally available man. Do not raise your children without a male presence. Especially if it's a boy. I can't even say that. Because especially if it's a girl. Girls, we have to learn intimacy from our father first. That's our first form of touch that has nothing to do with sex. Do you know how important that is? Especially if it's a high arousal girl like me. When I didn't learn good touch through my father, I seeked it out through boys. Handshakes, hugs. I was thirsty for what I actually was supposed to get as a child. Now, how many children is going with that wound? Stop blaming it on the kids. We have to be accountable as parents. You know, and it's a lot of other things going on when it comes to our governments not properly funding such like programs, not giving equal opportunity. Listen, it takes a community to raise children. I'm just simply stating my opinion and some facts. Stop getting in our own way and start being a part of the solution and not the damn problem. Please, people, come on.
Confusion, emotional confusion. I don't know how to feel. I don't know what to think. And how do you know what to feel when someone's love bombing you, right? How do you know how to feel when someone's undermining you, invalidating you, gaslighting you? It's confusing, right? So, you know, sometimes that emotional confusion in and of itself is hard to kind of get out of. So it may feel like you're sinking into a rut and you don't know how to see the situation or how to get out of the bond. I think that's why most women who are in domestic violence situations, or that's why most children who are put into foster care systems, you know, they often feel trapped, but as soon as they get out of that situation, they also feel lost because they've become so conditioned over time to that bond, we could say in quotation marks, bond, that now they're out of it, they don't know what to do. You know, you may also fall into additional traps in your adult life. You may fall into additional traps. Yeah, my mom and dad were abusive, and now I'm dating a woman who's abusive, right? I know my dad was abusive, now I'm dating a woman that's abusive. Or, you know, my dad was abusive to the entire family, and I keep bringing abusive friends into my space, right? So you may fall into additional traps. There may also be a lot of negative symptomatology. What does that mean? Well, a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of negative behaviors, right? Gambling, drinking, doing drugs, having affairs, you know, being in a very open kind of a relationship with somebody, arguing with everybody, being confrontational, not taking medication that you know is there to save you and help you and make you feel better, right? Dropping out of therapy every time you try to start therapy. Feeling depressed, feeling suicidal, feeling anxious, feeling obsessive. That's all negative symptomatology. And if you were to come to a therapist while you're having all those things or experiencing all of those things, we would then have to give you a diagnosis because all of those things have a reason why they're happening. So sometimes we call it negative symptomatology. Intimate partner violence is also something that can happen to you. You come from a very unstable family bond that's dysfunctional, that's disruptive. You're likely going to take that same way of being into another relationship in your life. Not always, you know, not always. I've seen clients who come from, you know, toxic bonds, have really healthy relationships, and I'm so proud of them. But there are situations where you can pull from your past and bring it into your present. And then you can be the perpetrator of intimate partner violence. And, you know, self-distraction, avoidance, right? Self-betrayal, that is also something that can happen to you. You know, you just have lost the ability to comfort yourself, praise yourself, keep yourself safe, care about yourself, right? Because you've been in such a bond, you haven't really had the ability to do that. And so sometimes once you're kind of released from that bond, it's really hard to figure out where you belong. So there may be a lot of avoidance, a lot of self-betrayal, and a lot of self-defeating, right? You're defeating yourself.
Oh yeah, I did.
This is quite interesting, right, guys? I really had to. No. There's a lot of research on this topic, so I really had to condense it into something that was bite-sized, if you.
What's up? Sorry, having my snack. I'm going to end the video here, y'all. She gave you enough information, and I shared enough information with you to get the big picture here. If you know someone that's struggling and may have, shared with you, I have trauma bonds I've been in, you know they're not in therapy. They probably, if you just observe them living kind of recklessly, you worrying about the kids. Listen, you're a permissive reporter. If you don't work in healthcare, it's called permissive reporter. I'm a mandated reporter because I'm a certified nursing assistant and a medical assistant. So if I see abuse, I'm legally supposed to report it, and I will. But if you're not a healthcare provider, you're a permissive reporter. Let's not just stand idly by and we're watching these people struggle and expose their children to all kinds of wrong. If you know it's wrong, say something. And it's not about you saying something. It's how you talk to people. We all could use a lesson in minding our manners. It's a way to say anything, whether it's good or bad. Learn the tongue that's needed for people to hear you when you talk. We come in at people's neck too much with disrespect, aggression, bossiness, like chuck all that. And really figure out what you need to say so they can hear you. And, maybe you say it enough, they'll want to get some help for themselves. Especially for the sake of them children, if children are exposed to a trauma-bonded parent that doesn't really know what they're doing. They might have a great bond with their kids in some ways, but if the parent has been through trauma and they got therapy for themselves or at least in treatment, it ain't getting no better. It just is not. So, sending much love and prayers to all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will be back. So don't sleep on your girl. I'm the creative one. Stay tuned. I got lots more videos coming your way. Peace out.